I was only 18 when my boss broke my femur during one of his assaults. But what he didn't know is that this painful fracture would be the beginning of my revenge. Hi there, my dear ones. My name is Dorothy, but everyone calls me Grandma Dot. I'm 71 years old and was born here in Cincinnati, Ohio, back in 1953. Today, I'm going to tell you a story I've kept in my heart for over 50 years, a story I never told even my own children. Before I really begin, I'd like to ask everyone to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. I'd also love to know where you're watching my life story from and how many children or grandchildren you have. That would make me so happy. It was 1971 when it all began. I had just turned 18 and needed to work to help out at home. My father had died the year before in a construction accident, and my mother was left alone with me and my 3 younger siblings. The Social Security benefits we received barely covered the rent on our little house in the Riverside neighborhood. "Dorothy, you're the oldest," my mother would say, holding back tears. "I need you to help me support this family." I understood. At 18, I already knew that life wasn't easy for those who were poor. I went door to door looking for work. At the downtown stores, they always told me I needed experience. At family homes, they wanted someone older, more reliable. I was almost giving up when a neighbor told me about Johnson Textiles. "They hire young girls there," she said. "It's hard work, but they pay on time every month." Johnson Textiles was located in the industrial district, a large gray building that manufactured fabrics for the region. I still remember the strong smell of dye and glue that came from there, a smell that stuck to the clothes and hair of anyone who worked there. I arrived there on a Monday morning in March 1971. I was nervous, wearing my nicest dress, a navy blue one my mother had sewn for me. At the front desk, a grumpy man told me to wait. "Mr. Robert will see you now," he said after an hour. Mr. Robert was the factory owner, a man of about 45, tall, with black hair always slicked back with pomade. He wore a suit even in the March heat, and had a way of speaking that made it seem like he was doing everyone a favor. "So you want to work here, young lady?" he asked, looking me up and down in a way that made me uncomfortable. "Yes, sir. I really need the job." "No experience, right? I can tell by your hands." He took my hands in his, pretending to examine them, but lingered longer than necessary. Soft hands like these don't know hard work. I felt a chill, but I needed that job. "I learn fast, Mr. Robert. I'm hardworking. I'm sure you are." He smiled strangely. "I'll give you a chance. You'll start in the packaging section. Salary is half minimum wage, 6 days a week, 7 in the morning to 6 at night." It wasn't much, but it was what was available. I accepted immediately. "One important thing," he said, getting up and coming to my side of the desk. "Here, I like dedicated employees who know how to appreciate when the boss is being nice. You seem like a smart girl." I didn't completely understand what he meant, but I agreed. I needed that job. I started the next day. The factory had about 200 employees, mostly young women like me. We worked in huge warehouses full of noisy machines that generated unbearable heat. My job was to package the fabrics that came out of the machines, fold them properly, and put them in boxes. The other girls were kind to me on the first day. They taught me how to do the work, where the bathroom was, where I could have lunch. "You seem like good people," said Connie, a 20-year-old girl who worked at the machine next to mine. "But be careful with Mr. Robert." "Careful how?" She looked around, saw that no one was listening. "He has certain habits with the new girls, especially the pretty ones like you." "What kind of habits?" "You'll find out soon enough." She made a sad face. "Just don't agree to go to his office alone, especially after work hours." That worried me, but I thought maybe it was an exaggeration. Mr. Robert had been polite to me, given me a job when no one else would. Maybe the girls were overreacting. In the first week, everything went normally. I arrived at 7 sharp, worked non-stop, left at 6. The work was tiring, but I was happy to be able to bring money home. "How's it going there, honey?" my mother would ask every night. "It's good, Mom. The boss seems like a good person." If I had known what was coming, I never would have said that. In the second week, Mr. Robert started showing up more in my section. He would come to check the quality of work, always stopping at my table longer than at others. "You're adapting well, Dorothy," he would say, putting his hand on my shoulder. I like dedicated employees like you. The hand on my shoulder lingered longer than normal. Sometimes he would stand right behind me, breathing on my neck while checking my work. Mr. Robert has his eye on you, Connie warned me during lunch. I've seen this story before. But he hasn't done anything too inappropriate, I said, trying to convince myself. Not yet. She sighed. Dorothy, can I give you some advice? If he calls you to his office, always take someone with you. Make up any excuse, but don't go alone. In the third week, the situation escalated. Mr. Robert started calling me to his office to discuss my performance. The first time, I managed to bring Connie along, pretending she needed to help me with something. You don't need to bring anyone, he said, clearly irritated. It was just so we could talk about your work. Sorry, Mr. Robert. Connie was teaching me some things. Next time, come alone. It was an order, not a request. Folks, I got emotional remembering those first days. Those of you watching, please leave in the comments where you're watching this video from, okay? I love knowing that people from all over America are following Grandparents' tales. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because that really helps me continue telling these stories. The second call to his office came on a Friday, almost at the end of the workday. I was finishing packaging the last shipment of the day when he appeared. Dorothy, I need to talk to you. In my office now. My heart raced. Connie had already left, as had most of the girls. The warehouse was almost empty. Can I go tomorrow, Mr. Robert? I'm finishing up here, I said now. His voice got harder. It's about your salary. You don't want to talk about your salary? Of course I did. Half minimum wage barely helped at home. If he was offering a raise, I went. It was the biggest mistake of my life. His office was on the second floor, far from the factory activity. It was a large room with a wooden desk, bookshelf full of books, and an old sofa in the corner. Sit here, he said, pointing to a chair in front of the desk. I sat, nervous. He remained standing, walking around the room, looking at me in a way that made me uncomfortable. You're a smart girl, Dorothy. Hardworking. I like that. Thank you, Mr. Robert. I was thinking of giving you a raise. Maybe even promoting you to section supervisor. My eyes lit up. Supervisor earned almost a full salary. But these things aren't free, he continued, coming behind my chair. I need to know if I can trust you. If you're really dedicated. I felt him place his hands on my shoulders. They were heavy, hot hands that squeezed firmly. I am dedicated, Mr. Robert. I work properly. It's not just work I'm talking about. His hands moved down my arms. I'm talking about loyalty, about gratitude. That's when I understood what Connie had tried to warn me about. My heart raced. My hands got sweaty. Mr. Robert, I think I should go. You're not going anywhere. His voice changed completely, became threatening. Do you know how many girls would like to be in your place? How many line up to work here? I know, but nothing. He came in front of me, preventing me from getting up. Do you want this job or not? I do. Then you're going to show that you deserve it. What happened in that room that afternoon, I can't describe in detail. Not because I don't remember. I remember every second, every word. But because some things are too heavy to be put into words. He hurt me. He humiliated me. He made me understand that there, in that factory, I wasn't an employee. I was his property. If you tell anyone, he said when he finished, straightening his suit, you'll be fired immediately, and I'll tell everyone what kind of girl you are. No one else will give you a job in this city. I left that room destroyed. I grabbed my purse, left the factory walking like a zombie. On the street, I threw up 3 times. I got home and locked myself in the bathroom, showered until the water ran out, but I couldn't feel clean. Are you okay, honey? My mother asked at dinner time. Just tired, Mom. How could I tell her? How could I say that the job that was supporting our family came with this price? On Saturday, I thought about not going back. I stayed in bed, pretended I had a fever. But on Sunday, seeing my mother count and recount the few coins we had, I knew I had no choice. Monday, I returned to the factory. Mr. Robert greeted me normally in front of others, as if nothing had happened. But in his eyes, I saw something new. A satisfaction, a power he knew he had over me. Good morning, Dorothy. I hope you rested well over the weekend. Good morning, Mr. Robert. Later I need to talk to you about that matter we discussed Friday. That matter. As if it were just any business. A work conversation. Connie noticed something had changed in me. What did he do? She asked during lunch. Nothing, I lied. We just talked about work. Dorothy, she held my hand. I know when a girl has been through this, it's written all over your face. I started crying. There, in the middle of the noisy factory cafeteria, I broke down. He said if I tell anyone, I'll be fired, I whispered. And you believe him? I can't lose this job, Connie. My family needs it. She sighed deeply. That's how he gets away with it. He targets girls like us, who have no choice. Others have been through the same thing. All the pretty ones he hires. Some endure it for a while, others quit soon. But he always finds new girls. That conversation opened my eyes to a reality I didn't want to see. It wasn't just me. It was a system, a routine. Mr. Robert used the necessity of poor girls to satisfy his sick desires. And I was just another one on the list. Now get ready. This life story of mine is going to shock you. So go ahead and like the video. Let's help Grandma here get this video out to the whole world. The weeks that followed were a nightmare I relived every day. Mr. Robert had established a diabolic routine. Every 2 or 3 days, he would call me to his office at the end of the workday. Always with the same excuse of discussing work. Always with the same veiled threat if I didn't show up. Dorothy, I need to see you at 6:30, he would say casually, passing by my table during the day. We need to discuss your productivity. Productivity. As if that had anything to do with work. I tried to make excuses, tried to postpone, but he always found a way to pressure me. You want to keep working here, don't you? Was all he needed to say. My life became a silent hell. During the day, I tried to concentrate on work, pretend everything was normal. I talked with the other girls, had lunch in the cafeteria, fulfilled my work hours. But inside, I was dying a little each day. At home, my mother started noticing changes. You're getting thinner, honey, she said one night, serving me dinner. And those dark circles. It's the work, Mom. It's demanding. But you're earning properly, right? You're not having trouble there? If she knew what kind of trouble I was having. But how could I tell her? How could I explain that the money I put on the table every month came with a price no daughter should pay? At work, Connie tried to help me however she could. Sometimes she would invent emergencies to get me out of his office. Other times she would stay nearby when he approached me. But she couldn't always be there. You need to report him, she insisted. This can't continue. Report to whom, Connie? He owns the factory. He knows all the important people in the city. To the police. Will the police believe a poor girl against a respected businessman? It'll be my word against his. It was 1971, folks. Women still had no voice in these matters, especially poor women, without education, without influential family. I knew that if I tried to report, I would be the one who came out looking like a liar, like someone trying to take advantage of the boss. The abuse kept getting worse, more violent, more degrading. Mr. Robert was getting bolder, crueler. It was as if impunity made him increasingly brave. In May 1971, he installed a new lock on the office door. So we can have more privacy in our conversations, he said, smiling in that disgusting way. Privacy. The word made me nauseous. It was around this time that I started having nightmares. I would wake up in the middle of the night, sweating cold, with the feeling that he was in my room. I lost my appetite, lost weight, lost the will to live. Dorothy, you don't look well, my mother said one June morning. Maybe you're sick? I'm fine, Mom. You're not fine at all. I'm going to schedule a doctor. You don't need to, Mom. It's just tiredness. How could I explain that my illness had no remedy at the pharmacy? That what was killing me inside wouldn't show up on any exam? At work, I tried to get closer to other girls, see if anyone else was going through the same situation. I discovered it wasn't just my paranoia. Other girls were also being called for conversations with Mr. Robert. There was Marlene, 19 years old, who had started 2 months after me. I saw in her eyes the same fear I felt. There was little Rosa, even younger, who always left his office with red eyes from crying. We could unite, I thought, report together. But when I tried to talk to them, they all denied it. Fear was greater than courage. They all needed the job. All had families to support. All knew he had too much power to be confronted. Mr. Robert perceived our desperation and used it in his favor. He knew exactly which buttons to press to keep us submissive. "Do you know what happens to girls who make scandals?" he said during one of the torture sessions. "They get marked. No decent man wants to marry a girl who's been talked about. No boss wants to hire someone who causes trouble. Marked, talked about. The words every girl of that era feared hearing. You're a smart girl, Dorothy. You're not going to ruin your life over nonsense." Nonsense. He called it nonsense. In July 1971, things got drastically worse. Mr. Robert started calling me not only at the end of the workday, but also during lunch hour. "To advance our conversation," he would say. This meant I went without eating, because the 50 minutes of lunch were spent in his office. I would return to the afternoon work hungry, in pain, wanting to die. The other girls started to notice. It was impossible to hide what was happening when I returned from lunch with wrinkled clothes, messy hair, red eyes. "Dorothy, you can't continue like this," Connie told me one day. "You're going to end up going crazy." Maybe I already was. I started having hallucinations, hearing voices, seeing Mr. Robert even when he wasn't there. The constant fear was destroying me inside. It was in August that he escalated to another level. Not satisfied with abusing me in the office, he started inventing urgent deliveries that I had to make to his house. "I need you to take these documents to my residence," he would say, handing me an envelope. "It's urgent." His house was in an upscale neighborhood, a white mansion with a well-maintained garden. The first time I went there, I still hoped it was really a work delivery. How naive I was. At his house, with no one around, without risk of being interrupted, he felt even more comfortable doing whatever he wanted with me. It was worse than at the factory, because there I knew that at some point I would have to leave, that other employees might show up. At his house, I was completely at his mercy. "Here no one can interrupt us," he would say, locking the door. "We can have more time for our conversations." More time meant more suffering, more humiliation, more moments when I wished I could die. I started missing work. I would make up illnesses, fake fainting spells, anything to avoid facing that routine of horror. But he always found a way to punish me for the absences. "Employees who miss a lot of work can't receive full salary," he told me, deducting 2 days from my pay. "I hope you understand." I understood perfectly. It was another way to control me, to keep me trapped in that situation. In September, something happened that almost made me give up on everything. My mother discovered the salary deductions and came to question me. "Dorothy, why did your salary come up short this month?" "I missed some days, Mom. I was feeling sick." "Honey, we can't afford for you to miss work. We need that full money." Seeing the worry on her face, knowing that my family depended on that dirty money, destroyed me even more. I was trapped in a vicious cycle. I needed the job to support my family, but to keep the job, I had to submit to those abuses. It was around this time that I started thinking about running away. Leaving Cincinnati, going anywhere, starting a new life. But how? I had no money, nowhere to go, didn't know anyone in other cities. Mr. Robert perceived my growing desperation and seemed to feed off it. He became more violent, crueler, as if my suffering excited him even more. "Are you thinking about leaving?" he asked one October afternoon. "Forget that idea. You belong to me now. Belong, as if I were an object, property. And if you try to run away, I'll come after you. I have contacts everywhere. You won't get a job in any city if I don't want you to." The threat was real. Men like him had power, influence, contacts. They could destroy a person's life with one phone call. In November 1971, almost a year after I had started working at the factory, I was at my limit. I had lost 15 pounds, developed an ulcer from so much stress, and was starting to have suicidal thoughts. That's when his thirst for power and cruelty led him to make the mistake that would change everything. On a Friday afternoon in late November, he called me to the office as always, but this time he was different, more agitated, more violent. He had been drinking. I could smell the alcohol on his breath. "Today you're going to learn a lesson," he said, pushing me harder than usual. What happened that afternoon was worse than everything I had suffered until then. He hurt me in a way he had never done before, with a violence that bordered on madness. That's when I heard the crack, a dry sound, like a branch breaking. Then came the pain. A pain so intense it made me scream like I had never screamed in my life. My right leg had broken. The femur had snapped in half. Mr. Robert stopped immediately, his face turning white with fright. "Shut up!" he screamed, trying to muffle my screams of pain. "Stop screaming!" But I couldn't stop. The pain was unbearable, radiating from my leg through my whole body. I felt like I was going to faint, that I was going to die right there. "My God, what have I done?" he muttered, looking at my leg in an abnormal position. "What have I done?" For the first time in almost a year, I saw fear in his eyes. He was no longer the powerful man who controlled everything. He was a desperate criminal who had gone too far. And in that moment, even with all the pain I felt, I knew I finally had something against him. Something he couldn't hide, couldn't deny, couldn't explain. My broken leg would be the beginning of his end. The pain was so intense, I felt my vision darken. My leg was in a completely wrong position, and the broken femur made a horrible sound every time I tried to move. Mr. Robert was in total panic, pacing back and forth in the office like a caged animal. "Stop screaming, for God's sake," he yelled, his hands shaking. "Someone's going to hear." But I couldn't stop. It was as if all the accumulated suffering from almost a year was coming out through those screams. The physical pain mixed with the emotional pain, creating a tsunami of agony I had never experienced. "You have to be quiet," he said, trying to cover my mouth with his hand. "Listen, it was an accident. You fell. You slipped. That's what happened." Even with the unbearable pain, I managed to understand what he was trying to do. He was already inventing a version of events, a lie to protect himself. "No one's going to believe you if you say anything else," he continued, sweating coldly. "Who's going to believe a girl against me? You fell, that's it." But this time it was different. This time there was physical evidence. A broken leg wasn't something that could be hidden or denied. Doctors would ask questions, nurses would take notes, there would be records. His desperation was evident. For the first time, I saw real fear in the eyes of that man who had tormented me for so many months. He knew he had crossed a dangerous line. "I'm going to take you to the hospital," he said, trying to lift me. "We'll make up a story. You fell down the factory stairs, hit your leg, that's it." When he tried to move me, the pain was so intense that I fainted for a few seconds. When I came to, I was being carried to his car, a black Ford he used to go to work. During the trip to the hospital, he wouldn't stop repeating the version we had to tell. "You were going down the factory stairs when you slipped. You hit your leg on the iron step. It was a work accident, nothing more. Every pothole in the road made my leg hurt even more. I felt like the bones were crumbling inside my flesh. But in the middle of all that agony, part of my mind was calculating, planning." We arrived at Cincinnati General Hospital at 7 in the evening. Mr. Robert carried me inside, shouting for the nurses. "Help here! My employee fell at the factory. She broke her leg." The doctors rushed me to an emergency room. Dr. Wilson, a man of about 50, began examining my leg while the nurses tried to calm me down. "How did this happen?" he asked, gently touching the fracture area. I looked at Mr. Robert, who was standing in the doorway, glaring at me. It was my chance. I could tell the truth, report everything right there, but I was still afraid. Even with my broken leg, even knowing he had gone too far, the terror he had planted in me during almost a year was still strong. "I fell down the factory stairs," I lied, feeling tears stream down my face. "I slipped and hit my leg." Dr. Wilson frowned. "What kind of stairs?" "Iron ones," Mr. Robert answered quickly. "Iron steps, very hard. That's why it hurt so much." The doctor continued examining, but I noticed something bothered him. He looked at the fracture with a strange expression, as if he wasn't convinced of our version. "We're going to need to operate," he finally said. "It's a complex fracture. It's going to take time to heal." Operate. That meant I would be hospitalized, away from Mr. Robert, away from the factory. For the first time in months, I felt something like relief. "How many days in the hospital?" Mr. Robert asked, trying to seem concerned. At least 2 weeks for surgery and initial care. Then you'll need physical therapy for months. I saw Mr. Roberts' face turn pale. Months without having me under control. Months when I would be talking to doctors, nurses, other patients. Months when he couldn't threaten or intimidate me. "I'll notify your family," he said, trying to maintain the appearance of a concerned boss. "They need to know about the accident." When he left to make the phone call, Dr. Wilson approached me. "Dorothy, can I ask you a personal question?" My heart raced. "You can. This fracture, the pattern is very strange for a simple fall. It looks more like direct trauma, very great pressure applied to the leg." He knew. Somehow, the doctor knew this hadn't been a common accident. "Did anything else happen that you didn't tell me?" It was my chance. Here was an educated, respected man who could help me, who could believe me, but fear was still stronger. "No, doctor." It was what I said. He looked at me for a long time, then sighed. "Okay. Let's take care of your leg first." The surgery was performed the next morning. When I woke up from anesthesia, my mother was beside the bed, crying. "My daughter, how did this happen?" "I fell at the factory, Mom. Mr. Robert said he's going to pay for all the treatment. How good that you have such a generous boss." Generous. If she only knew. But in the days that followed, hospitalized in that hospital, something began to change inside me. Away from the factory, away from Mr. Roberts' constant threats, my mind began to function differently. The nurses were kind to me. The other patients talked, told stories, treated me like a human being. I had forgotten what it was like to be treated with dignity. Mr. Roberts showed up every day, always with flowers or fruit, playing the role of concerned boss. But when we were alone, he showed his true face. "I hope you're not thinking about saying nonsense to anyone," he would whisper when no one was listening. "Remember that your family still needs me." But his threats began to sound empty. He was nervous, insecure. I saw in his eyes that he was afraid I might change my version. On the 5th day of hospitalization, something happened that changed everything. Dr. Wilson came to talk to me again, but this time he brought someone with him, a woman of about 40, very serious. "Dorothy, this is Dr. Sarah, our psychologist. She would like to talk to you." Psychologist. My heart raced. Why did they want me to talk to a psychologist? "It's routine," Dr. Sarah explained. "We always talk to patients who have suffered trauma, to help with recovery." We were alone in the room. She pulled up a chair and sat very close to my bed. "How are you feeling, Dorothy?" "My leg is hurting less." "I'm not talking about your leg. I'm talking about you, as a person." The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me how I felt as a person. "I don't know. Normal, I guess. Dr. Wilson told me that your fracture is quite unusual. He has experience with work accidents and said he's never seen anything like it." I felt my blood freeze. But that's what happened. I fell down the stairs. "Dorothy, you know you can tell me the truth, right? Nothing you say here will leave this room without your permission." For a moment, I thought about telling everything, but fear was still too strong. "It was an accident, doctor." She looked at me for a while, then sighed. "Okay. But if you change your mind, you can call me anytime." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the conversation with Dr. Sarah, Dr. Wilson's suspicion, Mr. Roberts' nervousness. For the first time in almost a year, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. Maybe there were people willing to help me. On the 7th day, I received an unexpected visit. Connie showed up at the hospital, bringing flowers and a worried expression. "Dorothy, how are you? Everyone at the factory is talking about your accident." "I'm better. I'll be back to work soon." "Are you sure it was an accident?" she asked quietly, looking around. "Why do you ask that?" "Because I've known you for almost a year. I know how you walk, how you go up and down stairs. You're very careful. You're not the type who trips." Connie was giving me an opening. A chance to tell the truth to someone who already knew, who already suspected. "Connie, he did this to you, didn't he?" The tears began to fall. I couldn't hold them back anymore. "He said, if I tell, he'll fire me. He'll spread that I'm a tramp. My family needs the money." "Dorothy, look at yourself. Look where you are. You almost died. How far does this man have to go before you react?" She was right. I had hit rock bottom. I couldn't go any lower. But what can I do? Who's going to believe me? "I'm going to help you. You're not alone in this." In that conversation with Connie, I made the decision that would change my life forever. I wasn't going to accept being a victim anymore. I wasn't going to let my fear control my choices anymore. When she left, I called the nurse. I want to talk to Dr. Sarah. It's urgent. Dr. Sarah arrived half an hour later. She sat in the same chair with the same understanding expression. Changed your mind? I did, and I told everything. Every abuse, every threat, every humiliation. I told about the other employees who went through the same thing. I told how he used our economic necessity to keep us trapped. She listened to everything in silence, taking notes, asking specific questions. When I finished, I was exhausted but relieved. For the first time in almost a year, I had told my truth to someone. Dorothy, you were very brave to tell me this. Now you need to decide what you want to do. What can I do? You can report. We have medical evidence of violence. We have your testimony. I can put you in contact with lawyers who work with cases like this. What if no one believes me? Some people won't believe you, but others will. And this can prevent other girls from going through what you went through. I thought about the other factory employees, about Marlene, about Rosa, about those who were still to come. How many girls would Mr. Robert destroy if no one stopped him? I want to report, I said, with a firmness I hadn't felt in months. I want him to pay for what he did. Dr. Sarah smiled for the first time. Then let's start working. In the following days, still hospitalized, we began building the case against Mr. Robert. Dr. Sarah put me in contact with Mr. Thompson, a young lawyer who worked with worker cases. Your case is strong, he told me after hearing the whole story. We have medical evidence, witnesses, a pattern of behavior. We can sue for assault, sexual harassment, and a series of other things. But he has money, influence, and we have the truth. Sometimes that's enough. Mr. Robert continued showing up at the hospital, increasingly nervous. He perceived that something had changed, that I no longer had the same fear as before. You're different, he said during one of the visits. I hope you're not doing anything stupid. I'm not doing anything stupid, I replied, looking directly into his eyes. I'm doing justice. I saw his face change color. He knew I had talked. You don't know who you're messing with, he whispered, furious. I'm going to destroy you and your family. You already tried to destroy me, but you couldn't. It was the first time in almost a year that I responded to him without fear. And that feeling of power, of no longer being a victim, was intoxicating. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. My leg was still in a cast. I needed crutches, but I was free. And for the first time in months, truly free. Because now I had a weapon against him. I had courage, I had allies, I had a plan. The war had begun, and this time I wasn't going to lose. When I left the hospital with those crutches under my arm, I felt something I hadn't experienced in almost a year. Hope. My legs still hurt a lot, but my soul was lighter. For the first time since I started working at that cursed factory, I had a plan. Mr. Thompson had explained everything to me in minute detail. We were going to sue Mr. Robert for assault, sexual harassment, and create a precedent that could protect other women. But he was clear with me about the challenges. Dorothy, it's not going to be easy. He's going to try to discredit you, use expensive lawyers, try to bribe witnesses. You need to be prepared for a war. War. The word scared me, but at the same time gave me energy. After so much time being a victim, I was finally going to be able to fight. The first step was to collect evidence. We needed more witnesses, documents, anything that proved his pattern of behavior. Mr. Thompson advised me to look for other employees who had gone through the same situation. But before that, I had to face my family. When I got home that December afternoon in 1971, my mother received me with a mixture of relief and concern. Thank God you're okay, honey. Mr. Robert came by yesterday, said you can stay off as long as you need. What a good man, right? Good man. If she only knew. Mom, I need to talk to you about something very important. We sat in the kitchen of our simple little house. My mother served coffee and looked at me with that maternal expression that always calmed me. What is it, honey? You've been strange since you came back from the hospital. I took a deep breath. Telling the truth to Dr. Sarah had been difficult, but telling my own mother would be devastating. How could I break the heart of the woman who raised me? How could I say that the job that supported our family came with this horrible price? Mom, what happened to me at the factory wasn't an accident. She frowned. What do you mean it wasn't an accident? Mr. Robert, he hurt me on purpose. During something he was doing to me. I saw the confusion in her eyes slowly transform into horror as I told the story. Each word was like a stab in my own heart, because I knew how much I was hurting her. My dear child, she whispered when I finished, tears streaming down her face. Why didn't you tell me before? Because I was afraid, Mom. Afraid of losing the job. Afraid no one would believe me. Afraid he would carry out his threats. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. I felt her tears wetting my hair. I'm sorry, honey. Sorry for not noticing. Sorry for making you carry this alone. It wasn't your fault, Mom. It was? A mother has to protect her children. I failed. In that embrace, I felt I had another ally in my war against Mr. Robert. My mother had always been a strong woman, and now that strength was on my side. In the following days, I began the informal investigation that Mr. Thompson had suggested. First, I looked for Connie. She came to my house on a Saturday afternoon, nervous but determined. Dorothy, I decided I'm going to help you. I'm tired of staying quiet watching that man destroy girls' lives. Are you sure? It could be dangerous. Of course I'm sure. And it's not just me. Marlene and Rosa want to talk too. My heart raced. Other victims willing to testify. This changed everything. But there's more, Connie continued. Janet, who worked there until last year, also wants to testify. And she has a story that will shock you. Janet was a girl who had suddenly quit in the middle of 1971. At the time, no one understood why, since she really needed the job. We scheduled a meeting at Connie's house for the following Sunday. When I arrived there, limping with my crutches, I found 4 women sitting at the kitchen table, all with the same expression of fear and determination. Thank you for coming, I said, sitting with difficulty. I know it's not easy. Marlene was the first to speak. She confirmed everything I imagined. The same abuses, the same threats, the same pattern of behavior. It started 2 months after I started, she said, her voice trembling. First it was just flirting. Then it evolved to touching. Then she didn't need to finish. We all knew. Rosa, younger than all of us, could barely speak from crying so much, but she confirmed she had gone through the same thing. Janet brought the most shocking revelation. Girls, do you think we're the only ones? That man has been doing this for years, since he opened the factory in 1965. How do you know? Because I talked to other girls who worked there before. Susan, who left in 1969, went through the same thing. Regina, from 1968 too. And there are more. How many were we? How many lives had he destroyed over the years? Janet, why didn't you ever report? For the same reasons as you all. Fear, shame, necessity. But when I heard what happened to you, Dorothy, I decided I couldn't anymore. We left that meeting with a clear plan. We were going to unite, all together, and bring down that monster. Mr. Thompson was euphoric when he learned we had 5 witnesses willing to testify. With this, we have a solid case, he told me. It's no longer the word of one employee against the boss. It's a systematic pattern of abuse. But Mr. Robert wasn't sitting still. When he learned I hadn't returned to work after the medical leave period, he started making moves. First, he tried direct intimidation. He showed up at my house one January night in 1972, banging on the door hard. Dorothy, I need to talk to you. My mother answered the door, but stood firm. She doesn't want to talk to you, sir. It's about her job, about your family's future. I came out of the kitchen limping, still on crutches. For the first time, I was face to face with him outside the factory environment, away from the power he exercised there. What do you want? I want to make you a proposal. Come back to work. Forget this nonsense they're putting in your head, and I'll double your salary. Doubling the salary was a lot of money for our family. It would be the difference between struggling and living with dignity. And if I don't accept, then things are going to get difficult for you, and for your family. The threat was clear. But I was no longer the scared girl from a year ago. I don't accept, I said, looking directly into his eyes. And if you come near my family again, I'll call the police. He turned red with rage, but couldn't do anything there, in front of my mother, on the street where neighbors could see. "You're going to regret this," he whispered before leaving. In the following days, the retaliation began. First, they spread rumors about me in the neighborhood, that I was a liar, a tramp, that I was trying to extort an honest man. "Ignore that gossip," my mother advised me. "Those who know you know what kind of person you are." But the gossip hurt. Seeing neighbors who had known me since childhood whispering when I passed by was painful. Then came the economic threats. Mr. Robert had influence in local commerce and began pressuring suppliers not to sell on credit to my family. "Mrs. Mary," the grocery store owner told my mother, "I'm sorry, but I can't do credit accounts for you anymore." "Why, Mr. John? We always pay on time." Orders from above. Orders from above. Mr. Robert was using his economic power to strangle us financially. But Mr. Thompson had predicted this. "It's typical," he explained to me. "When powerful men feel threatened, they use all available resources." In February 1972, we finally filed the lawsuit. Mr. Thompson had prepared everything meticulously: victim testimonies, medical reports, evidence of the pattern of behavior. The lawsuit caused a scandal in the city. Nothing like this had ever happened in Cincinnati. An employee suing her boss for sexual harassment was unprecedented. The local newspapers covered the case, always carefully. "Employee accuses businessman of assault," read the headline in the Cincinnati Enquirer. The reaction was immediate and violent. Part of society sided with Mr. Robert. After all, he was a respected businessman, created jobs, attended church. "That girl is an opportunist," I heard a lady comment at the pharmacy. "She wants to take advantage of a good man." But another part began to question. Other women identified with our struggle, even if they didn't admit it publicly. Mr. Robert hired the best law firm in the city. Attorney Charles Mason was famous for defending businessmen in labor cases. His strategy was clear from the beginning: demoralize the victims. "My client is an upright man, family man, pillar of the community," he declared to the newspapers. "He's being the victim of an extortion attempt by disgruntled employees." The first hearing was scheduled for March 1972. Mr. Thompson prepared me for what was coming. "They're going to try to destroy you morally. They're going to question your reputation, your personal life. They're going to try to make you look like a liar." "I'm prepared." "Are you sure? Because once you start, there's no going back. You're going to be publicly exposed. You'll have to relive everything in detail." I thought about the other girls who still worked at the factory, about those who were still to come. I thought about how many lives Mr. Robert would destroy if he got away with it once more. I'm sure. On the day of the hearing, I arrived at the courthouse still on crutches. My leg was improving, but I still needed support. Mr. Thompson said this was good. It would show the judge the severity of the assault. The courthouse was packed. Journalists, curious onlookers, supporters from both sides. I had never seen so much activity in a trial in Cincinnati. When Mr. Robert entered the room, escorted by his expensive lawyers, our eyes met. For the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt determination. Attorney Charles Mason began as expected, trying to disqualify our case. "Your Honor, we are facing a clear attempt at extortion. Disgruntled employees trying to take advantage of a work accident to obtain financial gain." Mr. Thompson responded firmly. "Your Honor, we have here 5 different women in different periods, all reporting the same pattern of behavior. This isn't coincidence. It's system." When it was my turn to testify, I felt my heart race. There I was, a poor 19-year-old girl, facing one of the most powerful men in the city. "You may begin, miss," said the judge, Judge Robert Hayes. I told everything. Every abuse, every threat, every humiliation. I felt tears streaming down my face, but kept my voice steady. This was my chance to be heard, and I wasn't going to waste it. When Attorney Mason began to interrogate me, he tried to confuse me, make me contradict myself. "Don't you find it strange that you never reported before?" "Why only now, after the accident?" "Because I was afraid. And because only now did I find people willing to help me." "Aren't you making up this story to get money?" "If it were for money, I would have accepted the proposal he made to double my salary." I felt I had scored a point. Mr. Thompson had prepared me well. The other girls testified throughout the week. Each testimony confirmed the pattern, showed they weren't isolated cases. The most impactful moment was when Janet revealed the real extent of the problem. "Your Honor, I spoke with at least 8 women who went through the same situation at that factory. Some left the city out of shame. 8 women. Even more than we had imagined." Mr. Robert tried to deny everything, of course. He said we were liars, that he was being the victim of a conspiracy. But his version didn't hold up. How could he explain that 5 different women would invent the same story? How could he justify the pattern of behavior reported by victims who didn't even know each other? The trial dragged on for 3 months. 3 months of tension, veiled threats, psychological pressure. But also 3 months in which I felt growing inside me a strength I didn't know I possessed. In June 1972 came the sentence. Judge Hayes was clear and direct. This court recognizes the veracity of the facts narrated by the victims. The systematic pattern of abuse is evident and inadmissible. Mr. Robert was sentenced to 2 years in prison, payment of compensation to all victims, and temporary closure of the factory. When I heard the sentence, I broke down in tears, not of sadness, but of relief. I had won. We had won. Mr. Robert tried to appeal, but the higher courts confirmed the conviction. In September 1972, he was arrested. Seeing that man who had terrorized me for so long being led away in handcuffs was one of the most liberating sights of my life. The victory came at a price. We lost friends, faced prejudice, went through financial difficulties. But it was worth every sacrifice. Because we proved it was possible. That poor girls could face powerful men and win. That justice wasn't a privilege only for the rich. And mainly, we saved other girls from going through what we went through. The factory was reopened months later, but with new management and strict policies to protect female employees. Our victory echoed throughout the region. Other women were encouraged to report abuse, other lawsuits were filed. We had planted a seed of change that would flourish for decades. After Mr. Roberts' conviction in September 1972, I thought my life could finally follow a normal course. How naive I was. The victory in court was just the beginning of an even more challenging journey. Rebuilding my life from scratch, at 19 years old, with a leg that would never be the same and a reputation tarnished by the rumors circulating around the city. The compensation I received was significant for the standards of the time. $15,000, an amount that represented almost 2 years of salary. But the money came with a high emotional price. Every cent of that amount represented a humiliation suffered, a night of terror lived, a piece of my dignity that had been stolen. "Now you can rest," my mother said when the money arrived. "You can take care of yourself, get proper treatment." But resting was the last thing I wanted. During those months of trial, I had discovered an inner strength I didn't even know existed. I had proven to myself that I could face giants and win. And this discovery had awakened in me an ambition I never imagined having. The problem was, what future could a girl like me build? My right leg had permanent sequelae from the fracture. I limped slightly and felt pain when I stood for too long. Jobs that required physical effort were out of the question. Besides, my reputation in the city was complicated. Half the people saw me as a hero, the brave girl who had faced a powerful man. The other half considered me an opportunist who had set up a good man. "Dorothy, you could look for office work," Connie suggested in one of our conversations. "With your intelligence, you'd be perfect for administrative work." I tried some offices in the city, but always ran into the same problem. My name was associated with the scandal, and many employers were afraid to hire someone who caused trouble. "I'm sorry," said the manager of an accounting office, "but our company values discretion. We can't take risks." Risks. As if fighting for my rights was a character flaw. It was during this time of uncertainty that something unexpected happened. Mr. Thompson, my lawyer, made me a proposal that would completely change the direction of my life. "Dorothy, you have a natural talent for organization and communication. I saw that throughout the entire process. How about working with me?" "Working as what, sir?" "As a legal assistant. I can teach you the basics of law, you help me with paperwork, client service, and there's something you do better than any experienced lawyer. What's that? You understand victims. When a woman comes here suffering abuse, harassment, violence, she needs someone who understands what she's going through, someone who's been there. The proposal moved me and scared me at the same time. Working with law always seemed something very distant from my reality. But Mr. Thompson was offering not just a job, he was offering a purpose. But I don't have enough education. Education we can get. You have something much rarer. Life experience and courage to use that experience for the benefit of others. I accepted the proposal in October 1972. My first day at the office was scary. Me, a girl who had barely finished middle school, surrounded by law books, codes, complex processes. But Mr. Thompson was patient. He taught me to organize documents, write simple petitions, serve clients. And I discovered I had a knack for it. Most importantly, when women victims of violence came to the office, I could establish a connection that no male lawyer could. She understands us, I heard one client comment to another. It's not just professional, it's personal. In January 1973, Mr. Thompson made me another revolutionary proposal. Dorothy, how about getting your GED? Finishing high school? At 20 years old? So what? It's never too late to study. With a high school diploma, you could even think about going to law school. Law school. The idea seemed absurd to me at the time. A poor girl, daughter of a dead worker, victim of sexual abuse, going to law school? That didn't exist in my world. But the seed was planted. I started my GED in March 1973, studying at night after work. It was tough. I worked from 8 to 5 at the office, then ran to school from 7 to 10 at night. My leg hurt a lot at the end of the day, but my mind was more active than ever. I discovered that I loved studying, that I had a facility for learning. You're different, my mother commented a few months later. More determined. Determined was the right word. For the first time in my life, I had clear objectives. I wanted to graduate. I wanted to understand law deeply. I wanted to use my knowledge to help other women. In 1974, something happened that completely changed my perspective on the future. A client came to the office in a situation that made me relive my own traumas. Her name was Sandra. She was 18 years old and was being abused by her boss at the store where she worked. The story was frighteningly similar to mine. He said if I tell anyone, he'll spread that I'm a tramp, she told me, crying. My family needs my salary. It was like looking in a mirror of the past. The same manipulation, the same fear, the same feeling of being trapped. Sandra, I said, holding her hand, I know exactly what you're going through, and I know it seems impossible to get out of this situation. But it is possible. I told her my story. I saw her eyes fill with hope as she realized she wasn't alone, that someone had gone through the same hell and managed to get out. Do you really think I can win? I'm sure. And I'm going to help you. Sandra's case was my first as lead assistant. Mr. Thompson gave me complete freedom to conduct the investigation, collect testimonies, prepare the strategy. We discovered that her boss had the same pattern as Mr. Robert. Other employees had been victims, but all were afraid to speak. I used the same tactic that had worked in my case: bring the victims together, show them they weren't alone, build a solid case based on the pattern of behavior. In 6 months, we achieved not only the aggressor's conviction, but also a financial settlement that allowed Sandra to move to another city and start over. Thank you, she told me on the day of the sentence. You saved me. In that moment, I understood what my true purpose in life was. It wasn't just to survive my traumas. It was to transform them into a tool of liberation for other women. I finished my GED in December 1974 with excellent grades. Mr. Thompson organized a small party at the office to celebrate. Now comes the serious part, he said. Law school entrance exam. The 1975 entrance exam was one of the most challenging experiences of my life. Me, at 22 years old, competing with middle-class youth who had access to expensive prep courses, private schools, home libraries. I studied like I had never studied before. I got up at 5 in the morning to review subjects before work. At lunch, instead of eating, I would read. At night, after dinner, I studied until midnight. My mother worried about my obsession with studies. "Honey, you're going to get sick like this." "Mom, this is my only chance. If I don't pass this year, I might never have the courage to try again." The day of the exam came in December 1975. I remember every detail of that morning. The nervousness, the sweaty hands, the feeling that my entire future depended on those few hours. The exam was difficult, but I felt I had done well, especially on the essay, where I could talk about social justice and women's rights, topics I knew not just in theory, but in practice. The result came out in February 1976. When I saw my name on the list of those accepted, I started crying right there, in front of the university. I had made it. A poor girl, victim of abuse, limping on one leg, had passed the entrance exam for law at one of the best universities in Ohio. "Congratulations," said a fellow accepted student. "You must have studied a lot." If he only knew that I had studied not just books, but life, that my education had begun in that torture room of Mr. E.T.U. Roberts continued in the court hearings, and now finally reached the university. The first day of class was in March 1976. When I entered that room full of middle-class youth, all well-dressed, all confident, I felt I didn't belong in that place. "Are you really going to study law?" a classmate asked, looking at my simple clothes. "I thought you were a janitor." The observation hurt me, but also motivated me. I was going to prove I belonged there as much as any of them. College was a constant challenge. Many professors had prejudice against older students, especially women. Some classmates saw me as a curiosity, the poor girl who had been lucky to get in. But I had an advantage they didn't have: real experience. When we studied criminal law, I knew in practice how a court worked. When we saw labor law, I had lived in my own skin the abusive power relations. "Your participation in class is always very rich," said the civil law professor. "You bring a different perspective." Different perspective. It was a polite way of saying I had learned law in real life before learning it in books. During the 5 years of college, I continued working with Mr. Thompson. It was tough: morning classes, afternoon work, evening studies. But each semester that passed, I felt I was closer to my goal. In 1978, in the third year, something happened that marked me deeply. A women's law professor, an elective subject that few students took, called me to talk. "Dorothy, I heard about your story, your struggle. Have you ever thought about specializing in women's rights?" "How so, Professor?" "America is changing. Women are gaining more space, more rights. We're going to need female lawyers who understand these issues not just theoretically, but experientially." The suggestion planted a seed. I began studying more deeply women's rights, labor legislation, cases of discrimination and violence. I discovered that what had happened to me was happening to thousands of women throughout America, and very few had the courage or conditions to fight for their rights. In 1979, I wrote my thesis on sexual harassment in the workplace, legal and social analysis. I used my own case as the main study, analyzing both the legal and social aspects of the problem. "This work could become a book," said my advisor. "It's pioneering in America." Pioneering. A word that began to define my trajectory. I graduated in December 1980 at 27 years old. At graduation, when I went up on stage to receive my diploma, I saw my mother in the audience crying with pride. I thought about everything I had gone through to get there. The scared girl who had been abused and almost killed at 18 was now Dr. Dorothy, a graduated lawyer, specialist in women's rights. "And now?" Mr. Thompson asked after the ceremony. "Now I'm going to open my own office, specialized in cases no one wants to take: poor women, victims of violence, exploited workers. It's going to be hard to make money like that." "It's not about money. It's about justice." In January 1981, I rented a small room in downtown Cincinnati and put a sign on the door: Dr. Dorothy Santos, People's Law, People's Law. That's how I defined my work: law for the people, for those who had no voice, for those who had always been forgotten by the system. In the first months, I barely had clients. Many people distrusted such a young lawyer, especially a woman, especially with my story. But gradually, work began to appear. First, they were women referred by Mr. Thompson. Then, they started coming on their own. Victims who had heard about the lawyer who, understood their suffering. In 2 years, my office was always full. Cases of sexual harassment, domestic violence, workplace discrimination, alimony. Each case was a battle. Each victory was a small revolution. "You're changing the city," said Connie, who had become my secretary. "Women are no longer afraid to report. Changing the city." Maybe it was an exaggeration, but I felt I was planting seeds of transformation. In 1983, I received an invitation that would again change the direction of my life. The state of Ohio was creating the first women's police station in the state, and they wanted me to participate in the project as a consultant. "It's an opportunity to impact thousands of women," explained the project coordinator. "Your experience would be fundamental." I accepted the challenge. For 6 months, I traveled throughout the state, training officers, training staff, creating service protocols. It was gratifying to see that my individual struggle had become public policy, that other women would have access to dignified, respectful, efficient service. But the most important work was still to come. In 1984, I decided to write a book telling my complete story. "Why now?" my mother asked. "Because other girls need to know it's possible, that you can transform pain into purpose, trauma into strength." The book took 2 years to finish. From Trauma to Transformation, A Journey of Survival and Victory was published in 1986 and caused national impact. "Your story is inspiring," said a journalist from Time magazine. "It shows that it's possible to overcome any adversity." Overcoming adversity. Yes, it was possible. But more than that, it was possible to transform adversity into fuel for social change. The book brought me national recognition. I began giving lectures throughout the country, participating in television programs, being consulted by journalists. But most importantly, women from all corners of America began looking for me. Letters, phone calls, people who traveled hours to meet me. "Your story gave me courage," each one said. "If you could do it, I can too." And they could. One by one, these women overcame their traumas, built new lives, transformed from victims into protagonists. In 1987, at 34 years old, I looked back and saw the path I had traveled. From the broken 18-year-old girl to the nationally respected lawyer, from trauma to transformation. But I knew my journey was just beginning. I still had much to do, many women to help, many battles to win. And most importantly, I had discovered that my greatest victory wasn't having survived the abuse. It was having transformed that survival into a tool of liberation for others. My right leg still hurt on cold days, reminding me where it all began. But now that pain had a different meaning. It was no longer a symbol of trauma, but of transformation, of victory. My dear ones, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening to me with such care. This story wasn't easy to tell, but I know it can help other people who are going through difficulties. Don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, because that really helps me continue sharing these life stories with you. And please, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers all across America and beyond. A big hug to each of you. And remember, no matter how big the storm, there's always a rainbow waiting on the other side.